Shabbat Shalom. It was likely the year 1990 when, attending a festival service at what was then still a modern Orthodox synagogue in Los Angeles, the rabbi, about 3/4 of the way through the service, said something I had not heard before in my experience. He said, "The Kohanim will now exit to prepare for Duchanim, assisted by the Leviim." I had no idea what he had just said. A group of men left the room, and a few minutes later, they returned. I didn't notice at first that they weren't wearing their shoes. And they ascended the bima, placed their talits over their heads. I was firmly but gently admonished to not look. And the Kohanim began their special blessing. It was a haunting melody. I had never seen anything like it, and a very palpable energy shift took place in the room. I didn't notice that first time, but after seeing the ritual multiple times, I also noticed a very particular expression of pride on the faces of the wives of those men who ascended the bima, and especially of the mothers of those men on the bima, with their talisim hiding their faces and something going on under those prayer shawls that was, for me at the age of 20, really quite remarkable. If you have been in a community where there are a number of descendants of Kohanim, you may have experienced the Birkat Kohanim in a similar way. I am lucky to share the bima with a Kohen, but I can lay no such claim to being any kind of a bat Kohen. I am among the great masses of Yisraelim, I assume, not knowing any differently. The priestly blessing is also known as Nesiat Kapayim, the lifting of the hands. It's been recited by the priests since biblical times. It is performed ritually in the synagogue, usually during the holiday Musaf additional service. And the source for the practice, of course, is today's Parsha, right before we began the long litany of the sacrifices that were brought at the declaration of the altar. In Numbers chapter 6, verse 23, the Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, thus shall you bless the people of Israel, and say to them, the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord deal kindly and graciously with you. May the Lord bestow his favor upon you and grant you peace." And it finishes, "Thus they shall link my name with the people of Israel, and I will bless them." Very interesting a little bit who the they are. The male descendants of Aaron were granted this privilege to channel divine blessing to the congregation. It really is one of the most spiritually uplifting moments in Jewish life. If you don't think too hard about the hierarchies, if that doesn't bother you too much, it really is extraordinary as the entire congregation is embraced really in a divine hug. I want to thank Yehuda Sherpin and Sasha Friedman for some of this background material. It's known as the Duchanim, which was what Rabbi Sugarman was saying all those years ago. The Kohanim should exit to prepare for Duchanim. The priests recited the blessing every day while standing on a special platform in the temple known as a Duchan. So that's why we call it still today in some places. The ritual is called the Duchanim. Now, they were without shoes, and I assumed, once I noticed that after seeing it a few times, because I was on the women's side and couldn't see the men's feet too well, I assumed it was taken from the notion, the command that was given to Moses and later to Joshua, that when you're doing something particularly holy, you should remove your shoes because the ground upon which you stand is holy ground. Actually, many of the actual rituals and how the practice developed come from the Talmud, of course. And in Sota, page 40a, we are told that the Kohanim, when they ascend the dais to do this particular task, should be particularly careful that they don't have mud on their shoes. We are told that the Kohanim performed their ancient rites shoeless, because if anything is amiss on a Kohen's shoe, such as a loose lace or a broken sandal strap, a couple of things might happen. One, when the Kohanim would be walking back in after having their hands washed, by the way, which they do, by the Levium. The Levium are the helpers for that. If one of them has a broken shoelace, he might get left behind by his other Kohanim friends, and that would reduce his status for a moment. And also, heaven forfend, if the Kohanim were on the bima, why it particularly extended to shoes, but we're an old people. If something happened to the Kohen's shoes, I guess in terms of what he would need to do to fix his shoelace, he would have to bend down. And if he did that, it would look like it was an admission that maybe he wasn't really a Kohen or was lowering himself next to his other Kohen friends. I liked the idea that the ground upon which they stood was holy, but there are always practical reasons for many of the things that we do as well. So either way, they are without their shoes, they lift their hands beneath their talis, and the configuration of the fingers, which not everyone is able to do, I can't lay claim to it, but it actually depends on one's tradition. There are different customs for it, but the fingers are spread into sections resembling windows. The Talmud tells us that when the Kohanim would stand on the duchen, on the platform, the divine presence would rest above the joints of their fingers. So it was said that if one looked at the hands of the priest at that time, his eyes would become dim. We don't have the temple anymore, and the Kohanim actually no longer say God's ineffable name, which they did at one time. But we retained the tradition, the sense of mystery surrounding not looking at the Kohen. We're supposed to focus on ourselves. No one should be distracted by the Kohanim's faces or expressions. And they say technically a quick glance at the hands should be permitted, but the custom is to be stringent and not even glance at them, to remember the times when the blessing was given with God's sacred name, and even a glance would have been dangerous. That actually is another little piece in the Haftarah that could relate to this week's Parsha, not just the vows of the Nazirite, but that piece where Manoach says, we can't look at God and live. So it might have an actual inadvertent, I'm not sure, but a relationship to the custom of the priestly blessing. Rashi explains that we take this notion of God's presence coming through the priest's hands at that point, taken from a verse in Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 9. Behold, he is standing beyond the wall, looking from the windows, peering through the cracks. So beautiful. The Midrash interprets looking from the windows to mean that the divine presence rests above the heads of the Kohanim, and peering through the cracks suggests that God's presence is manifest through their fingers. A beautiful notion. And so because that is so powerful, children and newcomers to the ritual have been told for many years, don't look. But boy, is that tempting, because it is so magical and it's just so powerful, and it's difficult to resist the urge. And it is, in fact, been established that this was the origin of why Leonard Nimoy, who was not a Kohen, by the way, said he got the idea for the Vulcan salute for Star Trek because as a small boy, he peeked when he was told not to, and he saw the fingers of the Kohanim. So many years later, of course, Live Long and Prosper, that so many people know, is, yes, that is not an urban legend. It is actually based very much on Leonard's young experience of the Birkat Kohanim. The mystics are particularly besotted by the priestly blessing. If you stop to think about it, the words are kind of vague. Parents give this blessing to their children on many a Friday night. It is often given at bar mitzvahs and ofruf celebrations. But what the words actually mean, we're almost forbidden to really delve into. What does it mean that God should bestow his favor upon you, to look at you, to lift up your face, to kind of relate face to face? It's not at all clear, by the way. So no one should go around thinking that we all know exactly what the priestly blessing means, despite its sort of ubiquitous nature. But the mystics were not afraid of such things. They went right for it. And in the Zohar, the greatest mystical book of all of Jewish history, we have a couple of suggestions. So Rabbi Yossi said in the Zohar that when the Kohen raises his hand to bless the congregation, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, rests on his hands. But Rabbi Yitzchak asked, if they cannot see the Shekhinah, what harm is there for them? After all, it is written, no man shall see me and live. Our sages explain this to mean that no living man can see God. But Rabbi Yossi answered Rabbi Yitzchak, it is because the divine name is alluded to in the fingers of their hands, and a person should have yirah, should have awe. Although they cannot see the Shekhinah, the manifest presence of God, they should not look at the hands of the priests, so that the people should never be impudent toward the Shekhinah. How is the divine name alluded to in the 10 fingers? Anything in mysticism, the answer is corresponding to the 10 Sefirot, the 10 divine emanations that are the 10 divine modalities by which God is known in the world, corresponding to 10 divine names. The Zohar continues, we learn that when the priest raises his hand in blessing, the people must be in yirah. For Musar students, we know that the word yirah can mean either awe or fear or both. We will know when the priests give us that blessing that a time of goodwill should come to prevail throughout the worlds, the upper and lower worlds. And the upper and lower beings are blessed, and at that moment, there is no judgment, there is equality. The divine blessing, the shefa, the divine flow, is manifest in the world. This is the time, says the Zohar, when the most ancient and concealed is revealed in all of the little faces, and peace prevails in all. That's fitting, since the last words are, V'yasem lecha shalom. Peace should be placed upon you. We pray that the most concealed mysteries will be revealed to the world, and that the paths to peace will be soon and abundant. May we walk that path together with the blessing of the Kohanim ringing in our ears. Friends, I'd like to conclude today with a small offering of my own little face. This is a setting that Cantor Andy and I made for the priestly benediction, and a little bit of a modern translation, but we stayed with the original. And though my own children are far away, I say this blessing to them every Friday night. And I pray that we can offer this to one another and really mean it. Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha Shalom on your journey. May you be blessed on your journey. May you be
May God bless and keep you always. May He hold you in His heart. May He fill you full of love and keep you safe when we're apart. May He bring you lots of laughter. May He wipe away your tears. May He fill you full of wonder and always help you face your fears on your journey. May you be blessed on your journey. May you be blessed on your journey. May you be blessed. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.